So was talking. We talked about D&D. We talked about hit points. That led. There was a discussion with Raven Rock about some computer games, including Might and Magic and Wizard's Crown and Wizardry. And so it just brought up a nice little memory, and I thought I'd share it here as opposed to typing it in the comments. When I was young, my parents got me an Apple II Plus. So we had an Apple II Plus computer with a hard disk and a little green screen monitor. It was about yay big. And, I mean, and we were not by any stretch of the imagination rich. So, and at that time, that thing cost quite a bit of money. So I imagine it was quite the investment for them to buy this machine. Um, and I putzed around with computer programming and all the other stuff, but obviously we also used it to play a whole bunch of games. One of the first ones that I had gotten at some was Wizardry Proving Grounds of the Mad Overlord, the first Wizardry game was put out by Surtech Software, and um, it's by the way, there's a remake on Steam. You could certainly try this game out. Um, it's a 10 level dungeon crawl. You have a party of 6 characters. It's a blobber, so your guys walk right in a blob through the labyrinth, and you get random monsters, and then you fight in turn-based, what people would recognize now as JRPG battles, but it was not a Japanese RPG. You know, it was the RPG at the time. And so we played. I played that game, and my father, who to this day still has a bit of gamer in him, also played. Now you could not play. There was no multiplayer. It was a single player game. But keep in mind that the map was the same. There's no random generation. The map was the map. So my map and his map were the same map. And he had a party and I had a party. There were no profiles either. So you weren't saving to my profile and he was saving to his. He would get on and then put his characters in the party and then go into the dungeon. And when I played, I would put my characters in the party and go into the dungeon. It was the same save game for all intents and purposes. And if you died in the dungeon, your characters would be stuck there, and then another party could go drag them out to resurrect them. So you're effectively playing on the same map and sort of vaguely in the same world. Just not together, of course, because that just wasn't that wasn't we didn't have that kind of thing in those days. The other thing about Wizardry was, and a lot of games of that time, you were mapping physically. So you literally would have a graph paper, and you would sit there and you would go, well, okay, 3 squares, and then it makes a T, and then there's a door over here, right? You would map it meticulously square by square. And so we would sort of take turns, and he worked, and I didn't. I was a kid, so I had a lot more time than he did. But we would keep the same map. So we had this beautiful, nice desk that my grandfather had given us. And it had the apple there and the green screen up there. And we would keep this whole sheaf of graph paper there where we would then meticulously map the dungeons, but we would use the same maps. He would map. I could use those maps. I would then fill the maps out as I went, etc. And together we were sort of mapping the dungeon. So we were sort of playing together, even though, ultimately we never could play at the same time. And then occasionally, if he were playing, I would sit down and I would map beside him, or if he were playing, he would map and I would run the fights, etc. And so we played sort of together that way. And I mean, it was sort of neat because, you were effectively slowly working through this game together. Some of those maps were, they weren't super complicated. They were only so big, 16 by 16 squares. I think that was the size. And but like there might be teleporters, there might be tricks, you might be rotated, there might be totally dark areas, right? All of that required a little bit of meticulous planning and mapping. And again, like I said, these were dungeon crawl press your luck sort of games where the idea was, well, how far can I go? Can I make progress and go farther without going too far for too long and wasting my resources and then getting killed before I can turn and make my way back? And God forbid there's like a pit trap or something that then puts you down on a level below, or a teleporter that puts you in an area of the dungeon you have no idea where you're at, because then that puts you in jeopardy. And our collective efforts accumulated in, going lower and lower and deeper into the dungeon, um, and culminated in a couple very memorable long weekend nights. I do remember one night, it was like a Friday or Saturday. My dad didn't work the next day. And we sat up, we switched off every hour or so. He'd run the party, I'd run the party. And we would, switch characters, switch parties. Or he'd go down and you'd do an expedition and then come back up. Or I'd go down and do an expedition and come back up. And then we'd switch, like that kind of thing. And the other would map. And we were up all night till like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning, totally exhausted, having mapped, a couple of levels, getting closer and closer. All of that finally culminating in that 10th level and the final battle against the Mad Overlord, Werdna. And those are wonderful memories. Such a simple thing, but it's a nice way to share this very classic game with my dad. And, certainly I will always remember those maps and that last floor and that last clue, contra Dextra Avenue, and figuring out, oh, go the other way to go find the evil wizard, and then that big battle, and finally finishing that game. And again, it was through the combined efforts of me and my father, as we and it was not short. Like we spent many weeks sort of putzing, right? Each, mapping all those maps and sort of slowly making our way down to the third and the fifth and the seventh level, etc. Building up the party until that final battle. It was quite the thing. That game always has a very, very, very place in my heart there for that. And yeah, if you've never played it, it probably doesn't hold up to a lot of modern sensibilities of games. I actually don't know what they've done with the remake. They may very well have added quality of life. They probably added mapping, is my guess, because who the hell wants to map with graph paper nowadays, aside from me? And we played a bunch of other games together too, of course. After that, Might and Magic, a little bit of Wizard's Crown, which is one of my favorite games of all times. But again, Wizardry was sort of the first one that we played together. And it was such a neat, and I thought it was just so neat, right? You're not playing together, but you are yet playing together. You are working toward that communal goal of mapping out all the dungeons. And like I said, I'll remember it always. So thanks to Ed. Thank you, Sir Tech. And that's it. I will talk to you later. Bye-bye.